yeah, I just look at this all as a culmination of a life path for an awakened being, right? As a being awakens and comes out of their slumber and their hypnosis, they start to become more conscious and aware of the life within them and the life around them and how it all connects and how we create and the cause and effect and all that. And then just like the Christed being in the scripture, the only other stage to that awakening, right? The next stage to that awakening would be to take that truth and live it and embody that and communicate it to others who see value in it, right?
Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. My name is Lonnie. This is Lady Braven of the Pride, and I am passionate about encouraging you to be brave and to stand up for yourself and to believe in yourself and to find your true purpose and calling in this lifetime. Today, I have Paul Unslaved on with me, and we are going to be having an amazing conversation about standing under our own authority, exiting the matrix, and finding our true calling and passion in this life. So welcome, Paul. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Lonnie. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and you are not alone. You have something in your lap.
Oh, yeah. I'll take the piglet out. I don't know if you can hear the other pig outside screaming and yelling, the adult pig, but this is the one baby pig.
Oh my goodness! What?
This is the one baby pig that was kind of smaller than the rest of them. So being as how I was born premature at 2 pounds, big enough to fit in someone's hand, I said, I have to look after this little piglet because I saw the mama stepping all over it and it didn't seem like it was eating. And I know I get it. Nature sometimes is unpretty, but if I'm aware of something and I could do something to help out and give care to this being, then that's what I'm going to do. And if it doesn't make it, it doesn't make it. But for now, I'm feeding it from the little dropper. And
have you named him yet?
Have I named? Nah. I'm not necessarily big on naming. I mean, I did name the original grown pig after one of the arresting officers from Colorado State Patrol because we had such an interesting interaction together. I figured it would be apropos to name one of my loving farm creatures after such an influential individual. So, yeah, the original pig's name is Parsons. That's the name, Javelina Parsons. Is the original pig, and then I guess the male, who I didn't know impregnated the pig before she came out here, the male is still at the other property. I guess he will be known as Sparger because that was the other arresting officer. So Sparger the pig, Parsons the pig, and then 7 more piglets have come from that, right? So
wow, and now you're looking after the little baby runt pig.
You said, David, what?
And now you're looking after the little baby runt pig.
Yeah, see, unlike a lot of folks in society who seem to get off on controlling, dominating, and regulating the weakest, most innocent among us, I tend to feel better about caring for the most innocent and weakest among us. I'm weird like that, Maybe I'm just not tough enough. I'm not man enough. A lot of them tell me, get out there, cut that pig's throat, bleed it out, have some bacon for breakfast. That's what it's all about.
Well, I'm just getting to know you. I've seen a couple of your videos, but you seem like a pretty nice guy to me. And most people, what's that?
That's definitely a subjective opinion, but I appreciate the cuss word.
Right. Okay. Well, most people know you from your video where you got pulled over and the officer asked you for your license and registration and you explained to him that you didn't need it. So most people know you from that interview. And I think it's really interesting that the Supreme Court just affirmed that you don't need a driver's license to drive in the United States.
So now, when you say just did, there was a recent case?
Just recently, yeah.
Okay, yeah. See, I don't keep up on it too much because, like I always say, and they get upset with me, they'll say, well, you want to have it all ways. You want to cite certain Supreme Court decisions or compare to them, and then you want to discredit other ones. Well, yeah, because it's just a man or woman's determination in a costume, right? I'm not saying that to be like adversarial. It's just what is actually happening. Like, break it down to the system's dynamics, the parts of the whole. We have men and women who put on a costume, therefore they become agent and agency, which is beneath man and woman, and they've made a determination on the body politic, which is a corporate structure. So again, we need to get back into the understanding of difference between legal and lawful. These folks are there to set legal policy for other folks who self-identify as members of the body politic. So at some point later in the week, I'll do the broadcast and I'll bring up one of these police departments. They're arrogantly on Facebook laughing at people saying, if you ride around with these plates and you think you're a sovereign citizen, we're going to put you in jail and take your property. And they think it's just hilarious. You know, well, they're violating federal code. They're violating the law of this land, and they're violating universal law, right? And so I think that it's an interesting dynamic that so many people think it's so cute and funny to destroy their country and the only philosophy that made it great to begin with, right? If you're into that and you don't mind living in that, then have at it.
Right. So there is a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot of Supreme Court rulings that are coming out that are making a huge difference for everybody. And with all of that, I feel like more of the power is being returned back to the people. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that man and woman has to be responsible and account able when it comes to representatives. So I don't have any representatives. I don't choose to be represented. I
Mhm.
present myself as the original man or woman on the land, right? What some may call an American national. But for United States citizens who want benefits and privileges from the corporate structure that we call government, which just means mind control in Latin, they can have that. Absolutely, they can have that. They're entitled to all the benefits and privileges in exchange for their natural rights. That's contract law. And,
Mhm.
you know, we need to just start understanding the differentiation there, right? So the Supreme Court makes rulings on cases for matters that involve the body politic. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. You know, it's just, again, the determination of some man or woman. But the law of this land is codified universal law, right? The Constitution is the original contract where we hold all public servants accountable to a foundational philosophy. We all have the right to do pretty much whatever we please to pursue our happiness and property, unless we cause loss, injury, or harm, or unless we have a contract and owe a debt, right? So
Mhm.
that's where they get us. They get us in contracts, self-identifying with license, registration, insurance, and plates to fall within the confines of their jurisdiction. It has nothing to do with the place on a map. Jurisdiction in Latin means to say the law. So they get us into their jurisdiction by identifying as a part of the corporate body politic known as a United States citizen, all caps, and then we forego our natural rights for benefits and privileges. Once we get onto this fraud and this barratry and this duality of personage, right? Under US code, there's natural person, there's legal person. So when we start to understand this, which a lot of us are, and act on this, the fraud is up, right? The game is up. We go back to our original status and standing. And if they're going to do wrong to us, they're going to do that either way, right? But
I just wanted to say that I'm in Canada, so everything is a little bit different over here. It's very communist over here right now. And whenever I hear you speak, whenever I've watched any of your videos, I really feel like I got to sit there and take notes. It's a lot of information. And you have so much knowledge and wisdom. I really kind of want to figure out, is there any kind of a process? Is there any like a maybe a 5-step process that you can recommend for people to start learning about their own, taking back their own sovereignty, or learning about law in this way? Is there, did you take any courses? You're all self-taught, aren't you?
sure. So the majority of this is maybe influenced by a few people. I always mention Carl Lentz. There's a few people, I guess, up there in Canada. You would have Christopher James would be someone, I guess, who's more well known. You know, there may be a process that's bulletproof. If there is, I don't know of it. I don't have it. I don't use it. Essentially, all this is for me is a continual learning process and sharpening of the skill of how to communicate my belief and understanding and present it in an honorable, respectful, and empowered way, right? So I don't necessarily see this as formulaic. I don't think that's what the universe is asking of us right now. I think the universe is asking of us, like it always has been throughout the history, right, is to seek the truth or true enough and be set free from your self-created bondage, right? So it doesn't necessarily matter how you do it because it has to be pertinent to you. It has to pertain to your conviction, right? Where your heart lies. So the way you communicate it is your way of communicating it, but we're all communicating the same idea, right? When we start to do this process, we undo the process we've already done, which is giving our power away, right? Just by doing this process, we're stopping the action of giving our power away and our choice away. When we do that action, this dynamic changes. I don't believe it matters as much how we do it, right? It's more of the fact that we do it and that more and more people are doing it every day, right? And I can testify to that.
Right. I mean, to be honest, I only really started learning about this aspect of common law, natural law, whatever we want to call it, in the last 2 years, as my rights were taken away from me and my freedom was taken away from me. I only started looking into it just recently. I've taken a couple courses, the Law for Mankind, the Sovereign's Way, all of these things. But I still feel like you're a little bit different. Your information, you've got so much. Like, do you have a photographic memory? Like, you have a very high level of comprehension and intelligence. Like, I'm not trying to flatter you or anything, but can you speak a little bit about your learning process? Do you remember everything that you read?
Sure. So you're breaking up a little bit, but I'm just going to go with what I heard there. I also think that it's a fascinating dynamic that some people will call me autistic and other people will call me a genius. And I guess somewhere lies the truth within the middle there that I don't know what you would call it. I mean, I just look at it as the more you put yourself into something, the more that it becomes a part of you, right? So this understanding, this information is just so much a part of my day-to-day life and just conversations that I have and form of protecting myself, if you want to call it that, just worked into my faith system. You know, I have this rap so many times that it just starts to be a cultivated sort of rap, right? Where there's little parts and pieces of the information. It's in and on my heart. So I speak from the heart, right? It's a lifelong journey though. So I don't expect somebody to necessarily overnight be able to pull from all these things. You know, this is, like I said, it's a lifelong journey. It's probably at least a decade or 12 years of gathering different pieces of information and kind of weaving it all together and then developing the skill to be able to communicate it without looking completely crazy and unhinged. So I may not always hit that mark either, right? As far as not looking completely all over the place. But yeah, it just, like I said, this is a lifestyle, right? So the more that you style your life around the truth, freedom, rights, the individual, dare I use that word for colloquial purposes, the individual. All right, we'll try to roll with the punches. I just reset everything again. We'll see what happens.
Right. Okay. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, so you mentioned the lifestyle that you're living right now. I'm just trying to give people like some action steps that they can take to exit the matrix of control and disengage from the system of slavery that we've all been born into. So what kind of actions do you think that people could take? For example, I don't know, growing your own food, moving onto your own land.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like practical day-to-day stuff. Sure. I mean, you know, it's like you said, it's a no-brainer. This is common sense stuff. If people are whining on social media that the air is poisoned, the food is poisoned, the water is poisoned, the media is poisoned, the school system's poison, the religious system's poison. Well, go create your own, right? Stop bitching and whining and complaining about a toxic system they've put forth that continues to destroy us and each other for thousands of years, and go create your own, whatever that looks like, right? So again, this is sort of the, I don't want to bring it to a street level, but sometimes it's shocking to people. It's good for them. Get out of this pimp and hoe dynamic, right? Step into your own power. Stop whining and complaining about the abuser, who really isn't even, most cases, physically abusing you. He's tricking you out of your position using words and terms and understandings that you either don't have or refuse to get, right? So once it's given to you, once it's shown to you, stop letting other people trick you out of your power and position. You don't need them for safety and security. They're pimping you. There's no safety and security coming. There's only destruction, disempowerment, and deception, right? So the dynamics don't change. I could take it over here to a back alley street view. I could take it up here to the corporate boardroom and on Capitol Hill. The dynamic doesn't change. There's someone who's insecure, who needs a resource. There's someone who doesn't have it all, but is willing to manipulate you to get what you have that you don't know you have, and they're going to use it against you, right? So we have to correct that process. And ironically, you see now is the age where you have a lot more, what I see a lot of time is women coming forward, and they're stopping this dynamic with their children, if you want to use that word, right? Their property, essentially. So that being can upkeep and maintain itself. That being is the of the two beings who brought it in, right? So we're definitely in the age of women finding their voice and saying, we're not going to be a part of this stuff, but I also don't want to make it gender specific, because all across the board we have empowerment on both sides, and all across the board we have disempowerment and confusion and deception. So yeah.
So what have you created for yourself in that particular location that you're living at right now? What have you got? What kind of community do you have around you?
So it's just me and my buddy that you might have seen, older gentleman in some of the videos that I do with the policy enforcement. My other buddy who I met doing the broadcast was the one who opened this door to begin with. So, everything as it should be in its time, when we, again, live the lifestyle. I don't want to come off as arrogant and dismissive of other people's walk and journey, but I also want to be conscious of the fact that I made certain statements, and what folks would talk about manifestation is pretty much the closest thing that you're going to come to what you've seen come about, right? So I don't take all the credit for it. I think the universe is working and moving parts. People, places, and things are coming together based on that movement of the universal forces and energy. So right now it's just me, on his land. I have an offer to buy some of it. Right now we're just working together to create on it because we have common goals and vision. And the basics, some plants, fruit and vegetables, a little bit of cannabis,
some pigs,
some chickens, which bring the eggs. He did have a pig. He was originally, I don't eat the meat, right? I try not to kill anything that's not trying to kill me. But he had the pig originally. He was going to eat it, and then I guess he got attached to it, and I kind of busted his chops, no pun intended, over that. And so I said, well, just bring the pig up here. We'll let it roam around, see what it does. And lo and behold, it was pregnant. We didn't know when it came up here. So now there's 7 new piglets. But I don't really have any plan. I mean, preferably like to have animals that have a mutual benefit. But the way I look at it as the pig creates a quality of life sort of benefit, right? Where just the enjoyment and having it around and being able to observe it and, relate to life as life, that's
and something to look after.
Sure. I mean, it gives me, again, responsibility, accountability. It tests me. It challenges me. It also, too, it allows me to play with the idea of bringing, my own child into the world someday. Imagine that for all the policy enforcement and other folks out there who already had to deal with one of me. I might bring in more. So, I mean, it allows me to take on that role and see what that feels like. So I'm thankful and grateful for it. I think it's a humbling experience. And I think that it's a rewarding experience, just like, bringing a child or doing this walk and upholding truth and rights, caring for the animals and learning with them.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. Like everything that's happened in your life has brought you up until this moment. And with all of this information, it seems like you're quite passionate about sharing it with people to help educate and empower them with this kind of information. So, do you feel like this is part of your life purpose, your soul calling? Is
Sure,
this what you're here to do?
sure. That's one aspect of it. I mean, I think there's always a spiritual and physical component. I think they work together if everything's working correctly. I'm a man like anybody else. I enjoy validation. I enjoy feeling good about who I am and what I'm doing and having purpose and meaning in my life. The question is, what is it based on, right? I'm not seeking validation and supposed fulfillment from worldly things necessarily, right? But yeah, I just look at this all as a culmination of a life path for an awakened being, right? As a being awakens and comes out of their slumber and their hypnosis, they start to become more conscious and aware of the life within them and the life around them and how it all connects and how we create and the cause and effect and all that. And then just like the Christed being in the scripture, the only other stage to that awakening, right? The next stage to that awakening would be to take that truth and live it and embody that and communicate it to others who see value in it, right? It's not necessarily that I'm going to claim that the way that I'm living or what I'm doing or aspects of my inner space need to be taken on by anybody else. The test would be, right, to go back in my history and my track record, look at who I was and that being's inner space, and then look at how the life has evolved and the challenges I've been able to rise to the occasion, right? When you see a diametrically opposed being who's completely changed from what they are from the inside out, that should cause another being to go, well, I want some of that. If they're in darkness, right? If they have everything they need, then keep it moving. There's no reason you'd be with anybody talking when I'm talking anyway, right? But if you're in a space of some kind of darkness, or you're in a space of some kind of disempowerment, or you're just in a space of you want to know more about the difference between legal and lawful,
Hmm.
then it would be a desirable outcome for you to take in some of the information that I'm putting out because it can be applied with results, right? So
Yeah.
there's a practical purpose here.
Yeah, absolutely. The more authentic that you can be shining your light, the more people are going to be attracted to that kind of information that they resonate with and they want to learn from. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I've heard you mention the Phoenix process before, like the process of rising from the ashes of our own destruction, the fire that we create for ourselves. And again, like I've heard a little bit of your backstory, and I understand that you had a challenging upbringing of adversity, and that we're all forged by the fire. I understand this concept very well. I kind of feel like the whole entire world is going through their own collective dark night of the soul and Phoenix process. And they're all sitting in the fire right now. And we're being forced to kind of burn away everything that's no longer a part of our path and our journey so that we can rise again. So
So
I'm
yeah,
just
you
gonna
have folks. Oh no,
go
I didn't
ahead.
mean to cut you off. Okay. No, I
No,
was just going to say that you had folks who 10, 12, 20 years ago were talking about a perspective on reality, maybe all throughout the ages because it's cycles. But you see that what it tends to be in this, even in the cycles of history, are there are certain people who are ahead of the curve, right? For whatever reason that may be, they have been forced to look at themselves early on, usually through trauma or suffering, and through that process of looking at oneself, one comes to realize that who they think they are is not who they really are, and what they think the world is not what it really is. So this is a common experience throughout mankind, if you want to use that term. Just like I said, the experience of awakening, and usually it's born out of, I guess, destruction, suffering, and pain. Like you said, a lot of folks see, a lot of us were in a hole 10, 12 years ago and been working out of it over the past 10, 12 years. A lot of folks just realized the hole is there over the last 2 years. And that's why I say, a lot of people say, thank God all the time. And they'll yell at me, they'll say that this is Masonic, I'm a dark Mason. I'll say, thank Shaitan. Because had it not been for the concept of Shaitan, the archetype of evil, just completely coming out in the open and bringing forth these certain tests and challenges, I don't believe man and woman would be rising to the level of consciousness and awareness that they are now. So once again, through suffering, pain, and adversity, a new being is born, right? The rebirth. That's the Christed story.
Right. Like, do you really feel compelled to help people understand what's going on right now and to help them regain their own sovereignty and authority?
Yeah, that's part of it. And then the analogy I always give too is if you ever go to NA or AA, maybe a lot of folks have been fortunate enough or disciplined enough to never have to go. But a lot of times drug addicts will show up at NA and AA and speak to other drug addicts to keep themselves sober. A lot of the process of what I'm doing when I'm talking is refining my conversation with myself, because all relationships extend from the relationship you have with self. Every time I talk to others, I'm talking to an aspect of myself. I'm refining my communication, my understanding, my ideology, right? How I present it. So it's all one process. I show up to these meetings to keep myself on track and in line and reminding myself who and what I am and what I'm here to do as much as I do to others, right? Because self is self, right?
Yeah.
I can pretend to be this all-knowing, all-confident, all-empowered. It's night and day from where it was before, but there still has to be that process of being vigilant and reminding yourself daily who we are, what we're doing here, right? What is the motivation? What is the outcome? And just if you want to call it selfish, right? There's a difference between self-centered and centered in self. I understand that if I do not do something to change the dynamic of slavery, which starts in the mind and heart of each man and woman, I will have to live with the consequences of the slavery that I did not help to undo. So there is a selfish motive there, if you want to call it that. I simply don't want to live in and around slavery and mind control. So I'm going to do what I can to undo that process while playing fair in the game of life, right?
Did you hear what I said about talking to ourselves?
Well, don't phrase it that way, because they're liable to come lock me up faster than they already want to. But yeah, reminding ourselves who and what we are and what we're doing here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel like I do that a lot as well when I'm doing videos and I'm trying to remind my friends or anybody that's paying attention of something that's just occurred to me. I'm actually having a conversation with myself. And this is how I'm like kind of affirming my own thoughts and beliefs and kind of my own awareness of what's going on in the world. I sit there and I talk to myself on my phone and I make a video out of it. So I can understand that as well. So you really enjoy doing these videos and sharing this information and your experiences. I know that you've done quite a few. Are they all in this kind of setting, like interview setting on Zoom?
Pretty much. I mean, other than when I do the the broadcast, which is pretty much just me talking to the
I have
viewers.
seen you do a live event before too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then it's conversations like this, you know, about the universe in general. And then based on the platform, you know, different platforms kind of like to um, focus more on certain arts or disciplines or aspects of self, right? So, I mean, you know, I've looked at a lot of things. I'm not going to make any claims about who I am and what I know. But I definitely looked at a lot of things, enough of which I could have a pretty extensive conversation about different aspects of self, I guess you would call it, you know, who we are, what we're doing in the world, and how that affects us. And again, a lot of that learning came from just, you know, self-observation. Like, if you want to learn how to do something right, I oftentimes will say, I like to use cliches, do it wrong first, right? So I've done a lot of things wrong in order to learn how to do them right. Process of self-observation, I can then communicate it to other versions of self, because strange concept, we all pretty much find ourselves with the same types of people in the same places, doing the same things, just at different times, right? And we call it different things. But oftentimes the experience of being human and the human condition is unchanging throughout the ages, right? We just mold it and shape it based on our perception as a majority, that time in history. And that's part of what we're doing here now, right? Is we're removing the veil, the idea of individual and separateness, right? While still upholding the individual's separate rights and ability to choose. So there's that paradox we see oftentimes in spirituality, is that it's not one or the other, it's both things, right? We are an individual self, but that self happens to be one self. So every other individual self that you come across generally has the same equipment, has the same ability to function to a certain level and communicate. It's the only way we could have a conversation if I was talking to another version of self who understood what I understood. If not, we would just be walking around saying things all day and never having, like you said, any comprehension, any growth, any conversation. The root word is converse, like conversion. So the reason why these conversions happen is because we have conversations with self that have intrinsic and inherent value within them, because definitions of words and meaning are unchanging throughout the ages, unless you're dealing with liars, right? Deceivers, liars. There's other ways to put it, but we'll just use kind of regular street language here today.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So with all the conversations that you've had and all of the things that you've shared and the information and the knowledge, is there any in particular concept or idea or message that you've wanted to share that you haven't yet?
Something that I've wanted to share that I haven't yet? Not really.
Because I feel like a lot of your conversations, you're going over a lot of the same content over and over again. But like I said, when I hear you speak in an interview, I want to sit there and take notes. So there's a lot of content. There's a lot of information there. Is there anything that you've really wanted to say or share that hasn't really come out yet?
I don't think anything that necessarily hasn't come out. I think that maybe every time we talk about these certain things, it tends to go a certain way. And the idea tends to be the same. The communication of it may be a little bit different, but no, not at this time, but sometime in the future, going forward in the future, I might create a second channel and do more things pertaining to things that I'm into. Like people have asked me to do like cooking stuff or just stuff with the animals or, just stuff around here. I don't know if people are into that. It would seem to me people are more into me getting thrown in a cell and getting my property stolen on the side of the road. But, nowadays, I guess it's a bit more mundane. So, yeah,
well, I feel like people are really interested in how you are overcoming these challenges and how you're facing the system and standing up to it, because they want to learn how to do that themselves. So the conversations that I've had about you and your information and knowledge, anyway, that's what I've picked up from it, that people wanted to know how can they do what you're doing, how can they learn what you've learned, and how can they stand up to the system, and how can they exit the matrix of control. And
that's why I always go back to, right? And I had this thing where we came to this point in one of these interviews, the guy goes, I'm just not going to get like a regular news story, Fox News answer out of you. And I'm like, no, you're not, because this all starts with a self process. If you want to stand up to anything or stand up for anything, you have to first like yourself and respect yourself and believe or know what you're doing is true and correct. Forget about belief. You have to know what you're doing is true and correct. You have to be able to explain it and demonstrate it. So again, all conditions start with the mind, like enslavement. The word is mente. It starts in the mind. So if slavery starts in the mind, then freedom starts in the mind, right? It's just two sides of the same coin. So if each individual man or woman wants to know how to, here we're going to hit you with a cliche. If you want to change the world, first change yourself, right?
Yeah.
Just by changing yourself, you're going to change the world. So start observing yourself more, right? Start taking account of your belief system. What is it that you believe? Is it true? Can you demonstrate? Can you explain it to someone who's never heard it before and make it make sense? And what you'll come to find with the majority of people is the answer is no. They believe in something because someone told it to them and it feels good. But when the light is put upon it, when the words, terms, definitions, and meaning is brought about, people start fighting and running and going into that fight or flight state, right? Because they're in a space of insecurity. A good understanding does not ever take somebody to a fight or flight space. There is only understanding. There might be reactionaries on the other side of speaking that understanding, but the being who has that understanding never goes into that state, right? So, you know, like I said, I'll put up the police department the other day who just did it. They took the comments down. I'll show you your average politician. Every time they're asked a question, all it takes is a man or woman in the audience to stand up and ask a good question. And evil flees when none pursue, right? They'll run right out of the room, shut him up, ban him, censor him. So, you know, you have to find your voice. That's like, again, everyone's at different places in the process. So the initial state is you have to take account of yourself and what you believe. Like I said, you have to seek whether it's true or not. You have to be accountable to yourself and to that truth, and you have to check your ego. This doesn't feel good right now. And mama says that if I don't keep believing in this hierarchical belief system that we've all accepted in this family, that they ain't going to like me as much anymore, that they ain't going to give me as much stuff anymore, right? Yeah. You know, so I don't know where people are in the process, but yeah, there's levels to it. A lot of it you would think is common sense, but not so much, I guess, because we do what we know and what we're shown. And the majority of communities don't have folks who are talking about this, doing this, leading folks with this work. So people are left to, like I said, what they've always known and what they've always been shown, which is institutionalization, right? Most men and women raising children are institutionalized. They get all their information and their actions from the big institutions. We've seen that over the last 2 years. Trust the science, #expert. We get all of our thoughts, emotions, and actions straight from the institutions, and we wonder why we're completely mind-controlled, institutionalized, and it's like we're in a mental institution, right? Literally, people are walking around completely mentally ill, divided from each other, and seeking more help from the same people who've got them caged up and on the toxic drugs, and this is their version of order, right? What do you do with a bunch of people who can't govern themselves, don't know who and what they are? You put them in a cage, whether it's a visible cage or an invisible cage, and you keep them on the drugs so that they stay ordered, right? And now the inmates essentially are running the asylum.
Yeah, a couple things in there. There was a lot. I love what you said about, you know, if you want to, the cliche, if you want to be the change in the world, you have to start with yourself. So I'm a courage coach. I try to inspire and encourage people to be brave. And that always starts with their own personal growth or personal development work. It always starts by going inward and becoming more self-aware of our past traumas and why we behave the way that we do, and the lessons that we've learned along the way. So I encourage people to be brave. I also encourage people to stand up and speak out and stand under their own authority and start learning about what that means. And it's definitely a process of conscious ascension, because there's a lot of people who, there's many different levels of awakening as well. Like I feel like I've been a spiritually awake person my whole entire life. But I wasn't necessarily awake to the matrix and all the systems of control until the last couple of years when COVID started. And I even worked in TV and film for 20 years, and I had no idea what that whole entire industry was all about. And just until just recently, in the last couple of years, I've really started to understand like the purpose of Hollywood is all about influencing the masses and the propaganda and the lies and the mind control. So there's many different levels of awakening that I've gone through and that I can see that other people have gone through as well. So I always encourage people, I mean, first of all, to be brave, then to stand up and speak out and to be the change, but it's also a level of conscious ascension where they actually have to heal from their past and then expand their awareness of what's happening right now, and then also believe and know what's coming. And so as a courage coach, I try to encourage people, because what we believe is coming is what we're going to manifest. What we know and believe, and what we focus on, and where we put our energy about what's happening in the world, that's what we're going to manifest into our reality. And I'm a little bit nervous about asking you this question, because I want to keep it very kind of positive. I don't want to go down any dark holes, but what do you believe is happening right now on the planet and coming in the very near future?
Well, I don't think that it's about what I believe is coming. I think that anybody who's observing the cause and effect modality of this reality that we live in is that, we will get what we give. Like they say, take it down to basic cliche street language. So if you
Absolutely.
present yourself like a slave, you're going to get a bunch of masters who manifest themselves. So it's not what we're going to see, it's what's already happening. People have presented themselves as, and again, we're going to pick on men here for a second, because I just believe that it is chiefly the man's duty in this society to use their testosterone, the physical strength, right? The ability to be, if you want to call it, the stronger physical gender, right? Spiritually, I don't necessarily see a separation between man and woman, but physically, we are kind of put here in that role of protector and leader. So,
Mhm.
again, if you want to present yourself as an inauthentic corporate male with no principles and value systems other than what is in your wallet and what's between your legs and who you got with it, then you will continue to manifest slave masters, because they control your supply of that, whether you realize it or not, on all levels.
Mhm.
Right? Because again, who and what we are and what we know and don't know will then manifest our level of attraction and who we attract.
Mhm.
So they're literally controlling the majority of relationships based on what both beings know and don't know, based on the information that's presented through the media, right? The media.
Yeah.
So, you have essentially what I liken it to is a farm. You have a farm of a bunch of beings who don't know, don't see, don't care that there's a cage there, right? And they're essentially being coerced indirectly or directly into an end reality where certain ones are created to breed with each other ones are created to feel like misfits and not procreate. There's a whole system to how this thing operates. If we really want to break it down, the idea of culture, right? It sets everyone up for certain lanes to go down. And if you don't hit those marks, you're not entitled to the next layer of what we call success, right? Or you won't have access to certain things. At least that's the way they put it forth, right? But this is, again, an artificial reality, just like they're doing now. They're bringing in the next few thousand years, if they have their way, will be a digital artificial reality, or it'll be for eternity. Because once they get them chips in your head and they get them robots in your genetics, this is what we see kind of in Revelations, where people are going to be cursed if they aren't already, to
Mhm.
the end of time, right? So yeah, that we're already in an artificial reality. It's called code, right? It's called
Mhm.
legal code. And they're
Yeah.
now putting you into the next stage of that artificial reality matrix, and it's written by code. It's called the what do they call the thing? The Oculus, right? So now they're showing you people waking up, going to sleep, procreating, working, bathing, all with the goggles on. They gave us the game in the movies. How many times did they tell us that the architects of reality have created an artificial reality and we don't know it's there? And soon they're going to sew it all up, right? If we let them. I don't necessarily think it's going to go that way.
Mhm.
You're going to have to kill a lot of people at this point.
Yeah.
Pandora's out of the box and you can't put it back. But like I always say, their best people are working on that. So don't
Right.
underestimate them.
But hold on, this is the point that I wanted to make. There is a significant portion of society that is going one direction and down a very dark path and a very a negative agenda. But then there is another, especially in my community, the people that I know, the people that I associate with, that is focused on a very higher timeline and a higher possibility for humanity. And so there's two different directions. I mean, I'm sure there's millions of different directions, but two different directions, basically the dark and the light. And if we focus on the light and all of the possibilities and opportunities and put our energy towards those things that we want to manifest and not towards those things that may be a part of the reality, but if we don't put our energy towards that, they don't actually exist for us. So this is what I'm kind of saying. As a courage coach, I try to encourage people to focus on the lives that they want to manifest, the possibilities, the opportunities, the new earth energies, the higher vibrational frequencies, as opposed to the system of slavery that we're currently exposing and walking away from, choosing to walk away from. And so with that in mind, I mean, I'm sure you can agree that there's a number of different mindsets. And if we focus on the mindset that we want to create, I mean, the possibilities are endless for what we're capable of and what we can achieve.
Sure. But again, there's a fine line for me between not giving your power and energy toward the dark beast system, but also ignoring it because it's too fearful for you to comprehend that your best teacher, your best adversary is the one who keeps you on your toes and really makes you feel it. So
Right.
I don't have this opposing view to what I call the Shaitan archetype. I have a view that everything in the universe has a purpose and function, including what we call the devil or evil.
Yeah.
It's there to teach us through suffering and pain because we've ignored darkness. Right? If we only focus on positivity and ignore that darkness, which we've always done, then that darkness is going to run
So
head
that's
on
not
with our
exactly what I
reality.
meant. I agree with you
I know.
100%. Because we're all forged by the fire, right?
Sure.
And we have to go through the darkness in order for us to see the dawn and the possibilities, because it's the darkness that pushes us forward. But and I don't necessarily want to focus on only the positivity, but it's the darkness that pushed us towards the light. And as far as manifestation, I think it's really important that we understand what's going on so that we can make a different choice. And that's what it's all about.
That's like alchemy. Like where you're going with that is like alchemy. We're taking the lead, the as they say on the East Coast back in the day, we're taking shit and we're making shinola, right? That's one of the Italian phrases they used to use.
I've never heard it before, but
we're taking the lead and we're turning it into gold, right?
Yeah.
That's the alchemy. We're given the darkness. We thank the darkness for what it's taught us and what we understand about it. And we understand it's part of the process of awakening. You can't have one without the other. We just don't get paralyzed and we don't focus on that. We take that fear, that dark energy, that lower, whatever you want to call it. I don't demean it or dishonor it. We take that uncomfort and we learn to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, and then we manifest and transmute and we create something with that energy, because it's just an emotion, energy in motion, right?
It's also called shadow work.
Distribute it. Yeah, you could call it that.
Yeah. I really like that that explanation. So having said that, I mean, I can visualize the new earth. I can visualize the possibilities and opportunities that lie ahead. I can stay focused on all of that, having overcome my own adversity, having overcome the corruption and the fraud of everything that's going on right now. I'm not going to sit here and focus on all of that, but I'm going to use that information to empower me to head into the direction that I want to go. And this is like the manifestation 101, right? Focus on the direction that you want to go. And but it's also spiritual bypassing to not acknowledge the darkness and the shadow that most people just completely ignore. And I 100% agree with you. So having said that, what kind of things do you see for the future?
Like I said, I think that we're always, what it would seem to me based on history is, we're always kind of involved in this cycle. You know, I can't presume to know one way or the other. I think that the biggest test is us just doing what we think is true and what's right individually. Where that goes on a bigger scale, we're not individually responsible for. So I think that we're always in a state of flux, I guess, if you want to call it that, or a state of uncertainty in the sense of it's choice based, right? So where we're going to go is going to be dictated upon, it's going to be dictated by each individual's choice making ability, right? To perceive their own reality and the reality and make choices within that, right? So that is where we're going to go, right? Again, it doesn't matter what I want to be true, what I don't want to be true, what I believe. It's a mathematical equation. So I think that I guess we're pretty late in the game. That's a subjective opinion. But better late than never if we are late. I think that everything's kind of right on time to a certain degree. What concerns me is I think that folks who are really good at this game and been doing it for a long time are going to tell us everything before they do it, and they're going to quote get out ahead of us, right? And that's what concerns me as far as the physical reality goes. But then again, all I can do then is create and protect myself from that. If I have some kind of fear, insecurity, to say, well, where does my fear, insecurity lie? Is it legitimate, and how do I create out of that? So that's what my attempt of, working with my buddy with these chickens and having them lay eggs and growing, fruit and vegetables. This is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. But in the event of them crashing the economic system like they've been known to do in the past, the ubiquitous they, we won't name names, but certain people in certain groups have been known in the past to crash economies in order to avert the movement in consciousness, because they're aware, like I'm aware, that physical resources generally dominate most people's consciousness. And if it doesn't, it's a great way to bring somebody in back into a lower state of consciousness is take all their resource, put them back
Right.
in a fight or flight state, right? Where they can't grow any longer. They're too much focused on protection.
Okay. Now, having said that, okay, so we're all forged by the fire. So if the entire banking system, the entire political system, the government system, the schooling system, the medical system, if all of these systems of control were to come collapsing down, is that a bad thing?
I don't think it's necessarily a good or bad thing. I think that all these systems that exist because a precondition was existing, and that precondition was folks did not know how, or were bred, domesticated to not know how to take care of and govern themselves. For whatever reason, the animals seem to govern and take care of themselves. Man is the only creature that has to create institutions to write stuff down, to tell other people how to conduct and govern themselves, and still they kill themselves and each other. Right. So I don't necessarily see it as good or bad. I think it can go either way. It's a tool. Government is a tool, like a gun is a tool, like the Bible's a tool. It could free, it can enslave. It's based on the user, right? The preponderance of the users who are accessing that tool. So I think that as more folks like myself continue to delineate legal from lawful and give clarity to this understanding and what we're doing here, I think it definitely allows an opportunity for people to maybe go a little bit less out of their mind when the inevitable what seems to me to be the inevitable and what they're forecasting and what they've done in the past happens. They'll at least be a little bit more understanding and clarity, and hopefully, faithfully, a little bit more of an ability to take the next conscious right action and choice. But again, we're late in the game. We're so resource dependent upon these groups and folks that we say we don't like. We say they're so bad, but we're giving all our money and power and energy and attention and codependency to them and with them, right? So it's a really interesting study of the psychology, right? The Stockholm syndrome, where you wind up codependent upon your abuser while also trashing your abuser while also sticking up for your abuser. It's like we really need to break away. Like you said, we need to do the self-work. We need to break away yesterday, right? 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, create our own communities, our own gardens, our own supply lines and supply chains, our own means of bartering and trade. This is not a new idea. The hippies were doing it, back before I was born, I guess. So on to some level.
Absolutely. I 100% believe in barter and energy exchange. And I do believe that that's a part of our future as well.
And yeah, unlearning, right? Unslaving ourselves, unlearning the idea of what we think we want and need. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we're going to go back to the cliche in a sense, like how much do you really need, right? You want to be given everything, give everything up. The more that I've done without, the more I've really been able to come back to center and say, you know what? I don't really need too much. There's a lot of things we always want, but there's not really too many things that I need. So it frees me up to do more with my time or just do nothing because I'm not as ambitious and needing to control and go out in the world and make and conquer and dominate and produce. I don't need to do that to the degree that the next person does because I'm not as caught up in my ego. I'm here, right? I'm spirit in the body. I'm having this experience. I'm co-creating with the universe. The universe gives me whatever I need. Like I said, the chickens lay eggs, the plants give fruit and vegetables. What else are we looking for here other than other people to share that with? And that's it. You know, it doesn't have to be big skyscrapers and all that. I mean, that stuff is cool and nice. All the things that man creates is cool and nice and pretty and,
Yeah.
you know, can give you a dopamine hit. But what's your principle? What's your foundation? What's your day-to-day lifestyle that's going to give you faith and security when they take all that bullshit away? Because make no mistake, they already showed you. They'll take it right away. You don't comply and conform, they'll take it right away and they'll put you in a cell. So, you know, what do people need is my question. How much of this do you need revealed to you? How bad does it have to get before we say nah? And it looks like now we're starting to see some of the Supreme Court folks, there's fires getting hot under their ass now. They're starting to say, you know what, maybe we need to start realigning ourselves with the foundational principles of this country because we're about to lose everything soon, right? They don't want to lose their house and their pretty things and their, you know, non-existent families, right? As much as they say they care about them, they don't do anything to secure them. So people are getting it. That fire's getting hot, and they're starting to get it. Hey, we better do right, or this is all going to go wrong.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've never actually lived in a city in my life. I've always been a country girl. I'm very connected to nature. I'm a very spiritual person. I use the forces of nature all the time for my own healing and my own health and happiness. And I think that a lot of people are being drawn out of the cities right now just because of the energy and the frequency, and they're being pulled into more nature and natural backgrounds and environments. And one of the most important things right now is community. I think community is probably the most important thing that we need to surround ourselves with. Nothing materialistic or superficial. I think finding connection in other people who are like-minded, other people who are going in the same direction as we are. This is really, really important for me anyway, because I don't actually believe that any of us were meant to live our lives alone. And community is one of the, like you said, it's like one of the best ways that we can share information, and we can like affirm our own thoughts and beliefs and feelings. And we can even actually do a lot of our own personal growth work in communication with like-minded people. So community is pretty important right now for everyone. Yeah. Okay, so how do you see, what is it that you see for yourself in the next 5 years even? You said that you're not an ambitious person, you don't have these big lofty goals or anything, and that's totally fine. But what makes you happiest? What makes your soul sing, passionate?
Well, you know, I mean, there's different aspects, I guess, to self when it comes to enjoyment. There's definitely a side to me. People would call it, I guess, a gambler side, or, you know, there's been different ways that it's been put forth to me by folks who were there to raise me, right? But there's a side of me that the more that I speak truth and the more that it gets recognized as truth, and the more the influence and inspiration gets more palpable and it feels powerful with inside me and outside of others. That's an enjoyable experience as long as it's kept in line and balanced. But yeah, there's definitely a side of me that says, you know, this can go the other way. And I guess I brought this up on different kind of broadcasts from time to time because it's something that I guess I don't want to say I struggle with it, but it's one of those, you know, the archetypes of like the Christed being, the idea of you rise in consciousness and you become an empowered individual, and then at some point you may have to give your life for this idea, right? For this. So I guess we always like to think, you know, hopefully and faithfully that that time doesn't come, but I think there's a certain aspect of myself that has to prepare myself for that eventuality, right? In order to live fully, one must learn or accept how they may die, right? So, yeah, I have certain ideas that I keep that I look at from time to time to keep me grounded and focused, and then everything else is just kind of like my day-to-day life, you know, where I find purpose and fulfillment and meaning and enjoyment. You know, like you said, part of us are social creatures. We like affection and touch. We like to be close to other beings who we resonate with. We like our time alone at times, right? Our solitude. The root word is soul, sun. We have to keep our light. So it's not for everybody, you know, everywhere all the time. But yeah, it's a walk. You know, it's a journey. I don't think it's ever done. I think that we're always learning more about ourselves and each other in the universe. I think we're always becoming better at how we communicate with others and how we present. And that's really all that I'm focused on, right? I look at it as, um, you know, a project, creating myself constantly. And then as time goes on, I will get feedback from that. And then I can work more from that, right? To create around that the results that I see. So that's all I look at. You know, my way of looking at it and feeling may be similar to most people, if not all people from time to time. It also may be radically different, but I think that's one of the sort of consequences of, you want to call it depersonalization, right? I don't identify with this body as much as I used to, being who and what I am, right? I'm here, I'm using it, I'm experiencing with it, and I'm learning how to let go of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time. So I think there's definitely a lot of paradox there. There's definitely a lot of um, alternate perspective.
Yeah, well, it's that alternate perspective that I think people are really interested in. And this is why you keep on doing these interviews and these broadcasts, because this is the kind of information, it's inspiring, it's encouraging, it's empowering, it's educational for a lot of people. And I want to say thank you for doing what you're doing. I think that you're doing a real service. And even though I know that that's not necessarily your goal or anything, but there's a lot of information and there's a lot of that perspective, that alternate perspective that you have, that is going to help a lot of people that are looking for this information right now. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, true, like you said, true service to others is true service to self, and true service to self is service to others. The more that I create a being that I like and respect, that other people can like and respect, can inspire to create that character, right? Like they say, that being has character, you know, that's created, that's molded. You're not who and what you are and who you're going to be. You're who and what you're going to create, right? So every moment of every day and every day.
Well, I think I lost the connection with Paul, and I am going to wrap it up here. That was a pretty amazing conversation. We talked a lot about exiting the matrix. We talked about soul purpose and passion, and how he knows all the things that he knows, and his passion for sharing this information and knowledge. And I am going to have to thank him again another time for the entire conversation. And I just want to remind everyone to like and share this video if you enjoyed this content. and subscribe to Lady Braven of the Pride, because we have these courageous conversations almost every day. And I really enjoy connecting with the soul self and getting right down into the passion and the purpose and our reason for being here on the planet at this particular time. So let me know if you enjoyed this conversation. Let me know if there's any other conversations that you would like me to have with anyone in particular, and stay tuned for more Lady Braven of the Pride. Thanks a lot, everyone.